Question number 5, tell me about a conflict you experienced on a team. So this is pretty similar to the last question, right? This is a subtype of the challenge, right? So in order to address this question, what is the question behind the question here? Well, they are asking you to describe a conflict, yes, but more important than that is describing how you worked through that. That is the most important thing to talk about here. It doesn't mean it needs to be 100% solved, but the conflict itself is incidental. This is just a way for them to probe how you respond to conflict. That's what's more important. And especially with this added wrinkle of in a team setting, how do you respond to conflict when it's on a team? So, how do you what the conflict was? That's kind of like the situation, right? And an important thing you need to do in a team setting is, again, you want to be mature, emotionally mature, and well intentioned, right? So I would not use this as a blame game. Don't blame people for the conflict, right? I wouldn't consider this a good time for you to be spiteful or vindictive, but keep a level head about it and explain what this conflict was and how and the steps that you took to address it, right? Um, for example, if this is a situation where, again, like the last example, you're the president of a club and there was someone, like your co-president, wasn't pulling their weight in organizing this event, maybe you could explain how you took them aside and tried to figure out if they were doing okay. Circumstance like that, how you spoke to them, things like that. That's could be a way you talked about how you addressed a conflict on a team. Ultimately, with questions like these that talk about negative things like conflict or challenge, you just want to make sure that you paint yourself in a good light without dragging anyone else under the bus. Because if you keep doing things like that, if you speak ill of other people in responding to a question like this, then the college interviewers will get the impression that you are someone who isn't super empathetic and doesn't have everyone's best interests at heart. And you want to make sure that you project all of these values that you do hold and that you have everyone's best interests in mind and that you are a sympathetic and empathetic person who is capable of working well with others, right? Because at the end of the day, college is not just a vacuum where you do your own thing in your own corner. You're going to be part of an entire student body of people who do all sorts of different things, and colleges are going to make sure that you have that emotional maturity and interactive skills to really be a part of a broader student body and interact with a lot of different types of people. Tell me about a time you exhibited leadership qualities. So, see how a lot of these questions are starting to sound similar, even though they have slightly different nuance? Like this one sounds like the conflict on the team. The time you exhibited leadership qualities could be the time you dealt with conflict in a team setting. Challenge that you faced. A lot of the same answers that you put for these might apply to several questions, right? In responding to this prompt is, again, doing exactly like we talked about before, right? The incident itself, the time is really the time that you displayed leadership qualities. This is really just the circumstances for you to talk about what your strengths are or when you did the right thing. Now, this could be any sort of leadership quality imaginable. It could be communication, organization, delegating ability, gratitude, empathy. These are all qualities that any good leader should have and should exercise. So, any one of these would be fantastic for responding to a question like this. Be sure to take some time to self reflect and figure out when you might have exhibited these qualities. Granted, this can be challenging to think of on the spot. So, again, feel free to jot down some bullet points as you begin to prepare for interviews for occasions where you exhibited these qualities, right? Again, you shouldn't try to overly memorize any of these circumstances, but even just a couple of bullet notes on what the circumstance was, what the challenge was, how you responded, and how things turned out, things like that. But again, see how a lot of these questions are getting similar?